Hey there, this is Natalie, back with more of the best stories from Reddit. Please give this video a like and gently caress the subscribe button if you enjoy these videos, and I'll keep them coming for you every day. Now here's a story that I am going to be reading for the first time live for this video, but the title just makes me think of a South Park bit. The story is entitled, I 32 female just discovered my husband 34 male of 6 years is a Reddit troll and I'm pregnant. And it's a concluded story with full updates, so let's begin. OP says, he left the browser open on our laptop after he went to work this morning. I go to work after, so I usually hop on and do my own things on my real account. Today, however, I was disgusted at what I found. My husband is a troll. A really frickin' nasty troll. He leaves horribly mean comments to all kinds of people. They're filled with racist slurs, awful insults. He tears into fat people, ugly people, etc. He loves to troll around places like r/progress pics to discourage people, etc. He sent PMs to people to call them names. Calls women who post on r/gone wild sloots and hoes and see you next Tuesdays, etc. I was horrified, completely horrified. My husband is a nice gentleman who is supportive and kind. In our 9-year relationship, we've fought 3 times total. I never thought this was a behaviour he would take part in. But this is something else. It made me wonder what else he did on the internet, so I looked at his browser history to find him also harassing teenagers on Tumblr, telling them to unalive themselves, calling cute girls ugly and fat and stupid, etc. It horrified me to think that this was the man who could be raising our daughter with me in a few months. I understand trolling can be fun. We've all laughed at Ken M once or twice, but this goes far beyond what I ever imagined. I don't know how to look at him. I've lost respect for the man I looked up to and admired. Good men don't tear each other down. People don't do that in general. I don't know what to do. I want to bring it up to him, but I don't know how to do it without him automatically getting defensive and spouting off the same lines you hear from people. Get a thicker skin, the world isn't kisses and rainbows, etc. Of course it isn't, but why contribute to it? TLDR, discovered that my husband is a nasty, negative, mean-spirited Reddit troll. See, it's like the whole skank hunt plotline from South Park. But yeah, I think there are definitely levels to this. I think I'd be okay with it if I found out someone was just blowing off some steam by having silly flame wars with people on Twitter or writing comments on Reddit making fun of people who've posted something really stupid. That would be, something I could get on board with. Not something I'd do myself, but I can see why it would be something that people find, a cathartic thing to do. Do a little trolling. But to just pick on random people, just random teenagers, especially given most people that you would consider trolling normally are the people who are being loud on X or something themselves, and who are probably expecting to get a reaction out of other people. People are on there trolling, you can troll them back, you can get into all of that nonsense, and some people find that fun. But if it's just a teenager posting selfies and you're telling them they're fat and ugly, they're probably not expecting to get that kind of reaction on their Tumblr blog, from a grown-ass man. And that kind of attention can lead to some serious problems if people do sort of take it seriously and aren't prepared for reading that kind of stuff about themselves. Especially teenagers at an age when they're already insecure and vulnerable. It wouldn't take much, of this kind of stuff to set someone off who was maybe prone to eating disorders or things like that. So it's one of those situations where you can see why it did shock and disgust OP as much as it did, because there is a line between what's online people fighting amongst themselves for fun and what's just setting out to like intentionally make someone feel terrible and, you know, potentially have consequences to them in real life. And usually when people say get a thicker skin or something in response to someone complaining about a reaction they've gotten online, it's usually because they're being whiny about a reaction to something that they themselves did or said. That kind of incited people to make fun of them or argue with them, rather than something as normal as somebody posting on a, you know, weight loss or fitness progress subreddit pictures of their progress. Sure, I expect everybody on those subreddits does get a little bit of trolling. Unfortunately, there are people that do find that entertaining to do, but it's really not something I would want to find out somebody I was close to was doing for their own entertainment. I'm guessing that when she confronts him about it, he's probably going to say that it's a way of blowing off steam. It sounds like the way that he interacts online is very different to how he is in real life. And, you know, sometimes you might find yourself, if you're a very nice and friendly person in real life, you might want somewhere to blow off steam and say that actually sometimes you really do think people are idiots and you wish you could say it to their face, but that wouldn't be nice. And I can see why you might think, if you did find that kind of thing therapeutic in some way, that the stuff you say on the internet just doesn't really matter. You don't really see them as real people. I suppose the solution to that would be to take that approach, but do it to people who aren't real people, like all those OF bots that follow me on Twitter. Maybe just everybody just go and abuse all the OF bots that follow you on Twitter, because you can guarantee there is no real person behind them. But it could be quite fun to insult them a bit. Still, there are some relevant comments before we get to the update and find out what happened when she did speak to him about this. Le Deux says, "You never suspected this kind of behaviour based on how he interacts with you and others. That's extremely horrifying. He seems like he has a lot of pent-up anger or resentment, and he's taking out on people over the internet. I think the best thing to do is to talk to him about it. You're having a child with him, and you can't just walk away from that, as horrifying of a discovery as this may be. You need to be careful when you approach him. You weren't snooping, he left it open. He can't get mad at you for that, though I'm sure he will be extremely defensive. Update us and let us know you're okay." OP says, "I don't intend on just walking away, but I'm stunned and horrified at the kind of person he's showing himself to be, you know?" Another commenter says, "How would you know this when moderators in these subreddits delete those types of comments and subsequently ban the username? He's trolling on some heavily moderated places, so he can't be making frequent comments under one name. Do you have access to all of his troll accounts?" OP says, "There were comments up that he'd just left this morning. That's how I know." OP, replying to a deleted comment, says, "Calling strangers awful names, harassing them, and doing things just to hurt their feelings does mean that he's not as good a person as I originally thought. Playing Call of Duty is one thing, telling a teenage girl to end her life is something else." Yeah, I think it is about like drawing that line between what's acceptable levels of trolling that is almost kind of like reciprocal, like everybody involved is just sort of like that and going off at each other, and the kind where you're just picking some random person and trying to ruin their day for absolutely no reason. But I don't think he's necessarily as bad as the first commenter there was making out, you know. I don't think it's necessarily that horrifying that he behaves that way online but is a nicer person in real life. I don't think that's indicative that he's some kind of psychopath or whatever. I think it's just that he's sort of bottling up a bit of anger and stuff, and maybe feels like the safest place to let it go is to strangers on the internet. It's not healthy, it's really not good, but I don't think it means that he's, you know, a completely sinister human being. I think it might be a method of coping with stress that more people than we maybe think are using. I mean, all of the people that troll online, they can't all be genuinely horrible people, to the people around them in real life. But still, we have the update, where OP says, I confronted him about the issue very tamely over breakfast. I asked him flat out if he was harassing and bullying people online. He said yes, and immediately withdrew. After telling him that I needed to know why, really why, not just I don't know, he said he needed time to think about it. When he finally gave me his answer, I was disappointed. He said he trolled/bullied people because it was an outlet for him to relieve stress. He said he didn't view the people as real, or what he was doing as anything other than a joke, and if it hurt feelings, those people have bigger problems, and it's not my fault. I told him that it was an unacceptable behaviour of an adult, and that he needed to stop it and find another way to express his frustrations that didn't involve hurting strangers. He said he would think about it. Unfortunately, he's still doing it. I saw it happening a few mornings back, and after he left, looked again to see more comments and posts. I was disappointed. This was not the man I married. Or so I thought, but I guess it is. I told him that we need to either go to counselling for this or start the separation process. I told him that I couldn't trust him to help raise a child if he speaks to strangers, children included, the way he does online. I let him know that I thought it was cowardly, pathetic, and that I've lost a lot of respect for him. I knew that this would be abrasive and hurtful, and I don't like that I had to tell him that. But I cannot look at him the same way. We haven't had sex, have barely touched. I cannot see my husband as a loving, gentle man. I'm not afraid of him, but I'm disgusted with his behaviour. This is the sort of thing children do. I made an appointment for counselling for myself over this. Unfortunately, he told me he wouldn't be going to counselling because there's nothing wrong with what he's doing, and he deserved to have his me time and release his emotions. And because I want to protect my child, myself, I've asked him to leave the house. He's staying with some friends, but I don't think this will lead to a reconciliation. I'd hoped this story would have gone another way. TLDR, confronted him. He decided it was more important to troll people than to be a good husband and father. And then OP gives a bit more information in the comments. She says, I never said anything about custody in my comments at all. Other people are bringing that up. I would not restrict his visitation or custody at all, so long as he proves he's reasonably fit as a parent. In response to people saying, but adults should be able to talk to adults whatever way they like, she says, I'm not restricting his freedom to talk to people in any way he wants. However, I am telling him that his choice to do so is an unacceptable behaviour for a grown man. He was given the option to see a therapist. He was given the option to stop. He was not willing to do either. If he changes his mind, he knows he's got wiggle room. This is the first step. Yeah, I mean, she's not telling him he can't do these things. She's telling him he can't be with her if he continues doing these things because they disgust her and make her lose respect for him. In her replies to another comment, she says, it is not a funny quirk to tell a child to off themselves. It is not harmless. It is not acceptable behaviour for a good person. Good people do not tear other people down. I'm not a fan of breakups, but you're painting this as a different situation. I gave him options on how we can fix this. I gave him a chance. He declined it and clung to acting like a horrible child. He showed himself to be someone other than who I married. I did not marry someone who would ever tell a child to off themselves. I married someone I thought was good and kind. He is not that person and was not willing to end that behaviour. He would rather harass children and be mean to people than have his family. Yeah, I think what's really strangest about all of this, and there is another update, so we're not quite done with the story, but what I think is really odd is that if it was just some stupid thing he did to blow off steam and he didn't really think of it as real, it wasn't important, then why was he willing to lose, his wife and potentially also his child over this? If it was something you just saw as a joke, as, a bit of casual trolling, then finding out that your partner was disturbed by it enough to actually want to leave you over it, if you don't stop, You'd think it would be a no-brainer to just stop. The fact that he either can't or refuses to stop means that there's a lot more to the reasons why he's doing it than just it's something he finds entertaining or it's a form of stress relief. He seems to have some kind of like psychological dependency on doing these kinds of behaviours at this point, considering how much he's willing to lose, rather than simply stopping doing them, which, if you don't have a kind of compulsive or addiction related reason to do them, would be very, very easy. It sounds like he definitely needs some kind of therapy. I don't like to sound like one of the kind of commenters you typically get on these posts that doesn't really know anything to suggest by way of advice other than always therapy for everybody involved in the story. But there are some situations where it's just kind of something has evolved in this person's mind that's making them really need to do this kind of behaviour, which clearly is not a healthy way to deal with stress. He's involved in it to the point where he's willing to lose his wife and child over it. And he's even kind of lost sight of what would even be considered funny as a joke, and has started, doing things like targeting people about their looks, telling people to off themselves, all of that sort of stuff. I don't know, there just has to be some kind of psychology stuff going on there that probably could be fixed. Still, there is an update from 6 months later, where OP says, "So, as you can see, it's been 6 months since all this started unfolding. Since then, I gave birth to my beautiful daughter. She's the light of my life, and she's one of the easiest babies I've ever been around. After 1 month of being apart, he contacted me and asked if I would still be willing to enter into counselling regarding our situation. Of course, after being together for so long and us having a child, and my belief that marriage is not something to be taken lightly, I jumped at this. In counselling, it was revealed that he was doing a lot more than what I knew about. He was involved heavily in bullying people all over the internet, and he said that was his stress relief, that if people can't take it, then it's their problem and not his. He admitted to being involved in taking pictures of fat women and posting them on Reddit, taking them from Tumblr, etc. In general, it was all worse than I had originally known. He moved to also doing individual therapy, while still not living at home and us not meeting elsewhere. He started to put his efforts elsewhere. He picked up a few new hobbies to release his tension to. He then decided that he would stop, and we slowly merged our family together again. I was feeling happy, ecstatic really, that my daughter would have the life she deserved. Unfortunately, he's still at it. After 3 weeks of being together and our lives seeming normal, I discovered from his friend that he was still harassing and bullying teenagers, fat women, etc. I have reason to believe that he's one of the individuals who bullied Leila Alcorn, as well as a few other trans teenagers. It broke my heart and solidified my decision. I tried to have one more counselling session to really get through to him, but he defended his actions as just the internet and not a big deal still. As of February, I filed for divorce. It broke my heart, and I wish there had been another way, but that's the end of this story. I can't be in a marriage with someone who is so cruel to children. I can't. My daughter and I are moving to a smaller house closer to my family. She'll be raised around many, many people who love her already. TLDR, husband decided to try to make it work, but he couldn't give up bullying and harassing teenagers. Now, that story was quite an old one, so I'm not sure who Leila Alcorn is. I'm guessing from the context, a trans teenager. But if he was, full on bullying people rather than just leaving trollish comments or sending one-off DMs to people with nasty, mean things, that's getting into properly illegal levels of harassment and cyberbullying. And towards people he didn't even really have any, specific reason to dislike or want to harm, people he just saw as internet names rather than real humans. Like I said before, there has to be some psychology stuff going on there. It seems like he started seeing a therapist, but, whether or not with time that will change anything, who's to say? I do think that the OP really gave everything the best shot she could, but it's really understandable that ultimately she did want to leave and didn't want her daughter to be raised by someone who expressed that kind of behaviour towards teenagers and women in general. Of course, he behaves differently in real life, so there's no reason to think he would, criticise his daughter the same way he criticises strangers on the internet when he's bullying them. But the fact he's even really thinking of talking to people like that as entertainment or stress relief is just disturbing. But what do you guys think? Let me know down in the comments. Thank you so much for listening to these stories. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell for more. And please let me know what you think of this video's stories down below.